It's the World Cup of World Cups, Episode 16, France 1998, Part 2, The Knockouts.
I think this is the first World Cup player to have been on the Interpol Most Wanted list.
Are you saying the one person more powerful than God is Sepp Blatter?
That is dedication when you invoke nature just so that you can get back to Alex Ferguson's pre-season training camp.
What's that book you've written? What's that about? How much I love you.
The best case scenario is everything's handmade, and that is the best case scenario.
I mean, that really puts the chimp thing into perspective.
Into the second round. Christian Vieri gets his fifth goal as Italy beat Norway 1-0. Norway are coached by Egil Olsen.
Egil Olsen turns up at Wimbledon in his wellies not long after, doesn't he? He's this rather eccentric nutcase manager who I'm pretty sure takes Wimbledon down. I think they get rid of him just before the final game of the season, if memory serves me correctly. But he was nuts. Even for Wimbledon, he was nuts.
He was too crazy for the crazy gang.
He was a member of the Communist Party. And in 1995, when nominating players for the FIFA World Player of the Year, when they ask all the international coaches to nominate players and then they work out who's got the most votes, he nominated Hege Riise, which is the first time a woman had ever been nominated for that prize.
Oh, wow.
Well, fair play.
Yeah, you like him now, don't you?
I didn't dislike him when he was a communist.
There are two unused subs in their squad who both retire at age 25. Vegard Hegem
Of Liverpool.
He got injured, but he now runs a salmon fishing business in Trondelag. And Espen Baardsen.
Former Spurs keeper. Did he retire that early, did he? Wow.
He retired at 25 after playing one game for Everton, saying that he just lost interest.
Ouch.
That's what a spell at Spurs and Everton in the late 90s will do to him.
He got a degree from the Open University and is now a fund manager in the city. He's done very nicely. Also in the squad, Eric Meekland, nicknamed the Mosquito. He used to go on the lash with Henning Berg between games. Minnie Jakobsen, who could more easily fit into a lunchbox. Do you want to hear about Egil Ostenstad? This is weird.
Yeah.
So he went to school with a guy called Tore Renberg, who went on to become an author. And he wrote a book called Mannen som Älskade Yngwie, which means The Man Who Loved Yngwie. And it was all about a teenage boy who falls in love with a new student at his school called Yngwie. Yngwie was based on Egil Ostenstad. There is a film of the book, which has an IMDb rating of 7.0, but I can't help but feel that would make it a bit awkward if they ever met up, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Oh, school reunion.
What's that book you've written? What's that about? How much I love you. Their squad also featured the baby-faced assassin, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who barely gets on the pitch in this World Cup. He would score the winning goal in the next year's Champions League. His daughter Kana plays for Manchester United, and he is the youngest ever recipient of a Norwegian knighthood.
Just while we're on female players who play for Man United, currently there is a woman called Maya Letizier, who is the daughter of a footballer lives from Guernsey. She is not related to Matt Letizier.
Yeah, I saw that name and wondered.
2 goals from goal machine Cesar Sampaio and 2 from Ronaldo give Brazil a 4-1 win over Chile. Chile's squad features Javier Margas, who had gone to play for West Ham and then disappear.
Spooky.
He was found in Chile a few weeks later saying that he'd retired.
That's what a spell at West Ham in the late 90s will do to him.
Yeah. Javier Margas owns Augusto Pinochet's armoured car.
Wow. There's no neutral way of owning August. Like, you either own it to be like, he was a piece of shit and now I own his car, or you own it because you really liked Pinochet. There's no just, oh, you like armoured cars.
I like the idea that after his spell at West Ham and working with Harry Redknapp, he just wanders around Santiago, just rolling the window down, giving transfer rumours.
I'm trying to wind this down. Oh no, it's 7-inch bulletproof glass. So it's gonna really take some arm muscles.
Ivan Zamorano, nicknamed Bam Bam, when he's playing for Inter Milan, he wears the number 18 shirt. What's significant about that shirt?
Because he's actually 1+8, because he had to give number 9 up for was it Ronaldo?
It was for Ronaldo, yeah.
So he went 1+8. I mean, that is probably a proper retro shirt with Zamorano 1+8.
Yeah, he kind of like uses sticky tape to put it on, like it mends it.
Oh, they wouldn't even give him the like. We'll make you a little font of a plus sign in the same. Oh,
like a slightly illegal personalised number plate.
Laurent Blanc, nicknamed Le President, scores the first golden goal in World Cup history as France beat Paraguay 1-0. Between August and December 2001, Manchester United lost 5 games he appeared in, and they lost to Bolton, Liverpool, Arsenal, Newcastle, and Chelsea, which spells out Blanc. Right? Yeah. Similarly, if you take the first letters of all the teams who've beaten Manchester United while Harry Maguire was playing, it spells Mississippi Riverboat Disco. They lost to Ipswich a lot. What would Laurent Blanc do before every game in the World Cup?
He would kiss the bald head of Fabien Barthez as a lucky charm. I assume Barthez consented to this, but it really became a thing, didn't it? Like before every game that he just had to do it, and again, it doesn't work out too badly for them.
He'd been watching a lot of Cool Runnings and was just like, "I need to kiss my lucky egg."
Just hope that Barthez doesn't hatch. France never lose with Thuram, Blanc, Desailly and Lizarazu as the back four, ever. And that was the game there where Chilivert plays amazingly.
Yes.
And at the end, when all the Paraguay players are weeping on the ground, he goes around picking them all up and geeing them up and everything.
He seems like a bloody good bloke, Chilivert.
More about him next time. Denmark stunned Nigeria and are 2-up within 12 minutes. By the time Tijani Babangida has pulled one back, it's 4-1, which was quite a shock because Denmark had sort of just about scraped through the groups and Nigeria had beaten Spain.
It was one where we were expecting Denmark to not do a lot.
They've still got both Laudrup brothers, albeit aging a little bit. You know, they've got arguably the best goalkeeper in the world still at this moment in Schmeichel too. I mean, they've sort of become the dark horses, don't they? Because they'd had a pretty poor Euro '96. Getting through to the quarterfinals is probably above par for Denmark.
The Nigerian squad included Nwankwo Kanu.
Yay!
Before you make stupid jokes about his name,
I'm not going to.
The name Nwankwo means child born on Nkwo Market Day.
That is stupider than just having that word in the middle of it. I just
Well, what market day were you born on?
born on a Sunday, so probably a car boot.
Yeah, just before his 20th birthday, doctors discovered a serious heart defect, but he underwent successful surgery to replace an aortic valve. And he now runs a charity called Kanu Heart Foundation that helps African kids with heart defects, and he's built 5 hospitals.
Oh, absolutely fair play to him. Speaking of heart defects at this World Cup, Ståle Solbakken, who is playing for Norway, had to retire because he had a heart attack during training and the club doctor rescued him, but he was legally dead and then managed to revive him. And then he later went on to manage Wolves for 6 months. And you can fill in your own Radio 4 joke there.
Obviously, Nwankwo Kanu and Brian Robson both played at a World Cup. And then their adopted son, Hal Robson Kanu, he goes on to appear for Wales.
He scored that amazing goal at Arsenal where he just sort of jumps in the air and taps it through his own legs.
He scores another one like almost from the byline against Chelsea as well, doesn't he? In about 99, he's pretty much nearly run the ball out of play and just curls it into the top corner. He's
10 years later, Kanu scores the winning goal in the FA Cup final
for Harry Redknapp's Portsmouth.
Abiodun Baruwa, their third choice goalkeeper. 5 years later, he would play 11 games for Barry Town.
Nice.
And another Championship manager legend, Taribo West.
Taribo West has a song on YouTube called Lively Up Africa with a bunch of different other footballers that was supposed to be about, I don't know, solving gun crime or whatever. But there's a bit of him where he's on Italian television, but there's 6 black African footballers and then one really heavy-set white woman who's dancing along and you just go, who's she?
She's recently divorced and on holiday. Having missed out on penalties in 1994, this time Mexico take the lead against Germany, thanks to El Matador, only for Klinsmann to equalise after 74 minutes and Bierhoff to get a winner 4 minutes from the end. So once again, Mexico just miss out on getting to the quarterfinals.
Klinsmann was pulling them up by himself at certain points in that game, just going, right, come on, I shall do all of this.
Arguably, a taller goalkeeper would have saved both of those efforts. Jorge Campos was 5'6". He scored 35 goals in his career, but none for Mexico in his 130 caps. Edgar David scores a 92nd minute winner for the Netherlands against Yugoslavia. This after Mijatovic had hit the bar from the penalty spot at 1-1. Davids had asked to be subbed off, but Hiddink said, no, stay on. And the Dutch didn't use any substitutes at all in this game. Edgar Davids started wearing goggles in 1999. Why?
He had glaucoma. He looked like a sci-fi character. He looked all cyberpunk.
I absolutely loved Edgar Davids all the way through his career. So when Tottenham signed him in, I think, 2005, that was just it for me. And I think he only scored once for Spurs against Wigan.
Yeah, in 2012, he became player manager of Barnet. And he sent the team coach back to pick up 36 supporters whose coach had broken down on the motorway and then dropped them off at the services. He didn't take them all the way back. He just took them to, I don't know, Lee Delamere and said, you deal with it. In the 2013-14 season, he was booked in the first 8 games he played and sent off in 3 of them.
We may suggest he may have lost a yard of pace by that point.
The Yugoslavs were captained by Dragan Stojkovic, nicknamed Pixie, after Pixie and Dixie, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Dejan Savicevic, nicknamed Il Genio.
Presumably the genius.
Yes, because he played for AC Milan. He had lots of arguments with Fabio Capello. He campaigned for Montenegrin independence. In 2004, he ran a red light while speeding in his Audi TT and reportedly said to the police, I'm God, laws don't apply to me. A year later, he crashed his Yamaha motorbike, flew through the air and landed on the pavement, fracturing both arms and his pelvic bone.
Laws don't apply to him, but the laws of physics do.
Certainly an anecdote for his next speed awareness course, anyway.
There's a very problematic version of Deo by a Yugoslavian band called the Kuguas that was rewritten to be about him. Yeah.
Feels like a football chant that's transferred into a pop song. I think that's...
I wouldn't watch the video if I were you.
Savo Milosevic was in this one, wasn't he?
Yes, or as he was known at Villa, Misalotovic.
Yeah.
Which seems like he scored 33 in 117. That's not awful.
No, but I remember because growing up in the Midlands around that time, and because my name is Savage, I got a lot of Savo Mislotovic jokes about my name.
2 years later, he won the Golden Boot at the Euros. This was, of course, after Villa sold him.
Yeah.
After we sold him, he became amazing. What had the remaining squad all done before the game against Tunisia?
They'd all dyed their hair bleach blonde, which was kind of known as the commentator's nightmare as well.
Because also Craig Burley had dyed his hair blonde midway through. And you go, well, that didn't help them, so...
I remember Jimmy Hill saying, well, it's only the same as all wearing the same shirt, isn't it? And being pilloried for saying that. Well, he's right, it is. It's just, when you have to look up which player's mine, the one who looks like Eminem.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't work because they get beat by Croatia. Their centre-back, Anton Dobos, in 2008, he had a car accident, went into a coma for a day, and then had amnesia and couldn't remember that he'd ever played football. A bit like when Harry Maguire signed for Manchester United. Which brings us to the tie of the round, England versus Argentina. Argentina should be wearing their home kit because the last time they played in the World Cup, they wore their blue shirts in 1986. And it's supposed to alternate. But Argentina have got it into their heads that their away kit is lucky, so they asked to wear it. And England just go, okay. So England would have worn red.
Which is traditionally lucky.
The kit we wore when we just beat a South American team. Yeah, we should have worn that.
I remember just how horrible the tension was for days. And then the game itself is a very good game. It's got a bit of everything.
It is just so dramatic for a neutral. That first half in particular, where just everything that could happen pretty much happens. Owen starting the game, there's been this clamour for Owen to inject some pace into that front line and to scare teams, and that's exactly what he does. I think my abiding memories of it are sitting in the living room at home with my mum and my sister watching it as well, and I'm pretty sure this was the first match that they'd sat down to watch in the entire tournament. Like, this was a huge national event, and it just getting slowly darker as the evening went on, as the night sort of dragged on, and obviously ultimately the heartbreak. But Owen winning his penalty, and maybe as getting our elbows out a little bit. I was too young to remember 86, but you grew up knowing the injustice of the hand of God. As soon as Owen does that, and he kind of goes a little bit of skullduggery here that you don't necessarily see from an England team, you kind of think, we're rolling our sleeves up here. We're here to give as good as we get. And then, of course, the Owen goal and that famous piece of Brian Moore commentary.
Beckham now to Owen, and here's another Owen run. He's going to worry them again. It's a great run by Michael Owen, and he might finish it off. Oh, it's a wonderful goal! What an amazing moment in Michael Owen's young career. A fantastic run that frightened the Argentinians, and a most unerring finish beyond Roa to make it 2-1 England. A terrific moment.
Every now and again, you'll see that goal with the BBC commentary, and it doesn't look right. It looks like Paul Scholes, I think, is about to come in and rob all the glory.
We shouldn't forget that this game was on ITV, which tells you everything you need to know about what's going to happen at the end of it.
Do you know the one that we should have it on? England's best TV network? Setanta. We won 86% of our games on Setanta.
The England team should draw up a contract with some kind of Setanta clause.
So the first goal comes from an Argentina penalty, which I would say is not nearly a penalty. There's dangling a leg, and then there's hooking a leg into the goalkeeper's groin.
I don't think we have any moral high ground at all when it comes to winning penalties at World Cups.
No, because the second one, which is Owen's penalty, is also a dive. But I think we were allowed one because the first one is...
That's right. Yeah. Simeone is the player who is fouled, and Batistuta scores the penalty, and Shearer takes the penalty that Owen wins. And that makes it 1-1. And then, as you say, Michael Owen scores that goal, picks up a through ball from David Beckham, and just runs, Forrest, run.
And one of my favourite bits of that is when it cuts to the bench and all the bench are off their feet, and there's kind of like Paul Merson and Sheringham, and they're just kind of applauding, and they are both have a look of exasperation, amazement, like the entire nation, and just, we're not getting another minute in this World Cup. That is it now. This guy is now the number one.
Speaking of Forrest Gump, Carl, what do the following films have in common? Forrest Gump, Rocky, Heat, Ghost, Jurassic Park, Cool Runnings, Seabiscuit, and The Karate Kid.
I've got them all in an unwrapped DVD on my shelf.
It is connected to this, what we've just been talking about. No?
No.
Those are the only 8 films that Michael Owen has ever seen.
Okay, so, I mean, did he go straight from Heat to Seabiscuit? What happened there?
He just famously doesn't like films.
On Twitter, he has written, I had to watch a film on a plane. #hate films.
It's sort of a shame, isn't it, that Michael Owen, who could have been an all-time England legend, and in maybe in some quarters what he achieved, has turned into such a bellend.
You say that, but earlier this year he was Donuts on The Masked Singer.
What? Oh my God! What? Michael Owen can he sing?
That's not really the point of the show. And of course, it was a good year for his family on reality TV because his daughter Gemma finished second on Series 8 of Love Island. On the stroke of half-time, Argentina score a really clever goal.
I remember walking down to the garage to buy chocolate because it was at the end of our road, and a guy in there just being like, "You've never seen a goal like it," which I hadn't. Everyone's expecting it to go over the wall, and it just goes round the wall to Zanetti, who's completely unmarked and just finishes.
While all the England defenders go, what?
Yeah.
It comes back to this skullduggery again, doesn't it, that the Argentinians are employing that we're going to see quite quickly in the second half.
Why is it skullduggery?
Being clever enough to outthink David Batty.
Maybe I'm a romantic. I think this was still in a period of football where actually now you do see a lot more of this like gamesmanship.
Why is it gamesmanship to take a free kick however you want?
Well, yeah, okay. I meant more the dive and the kick, but actually the quick free kick. I don't recall too many quick free kicks. And England are fast asleep. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. They should be more alert to what's about to happen.
Javier Zanetti played for Inter Milan until he was 41. He owns a restaurant called El Gaucho, and he converted Wesley Sneijder to Catholicism.
I thought for a second that was Wesley Snipes, and that's even more interesting.
In 2007, he released a single called Parole Parole with the 67-year-old Italian folk singer Mina. It is as odd as it sounds.
Parole, parole, parole. Escúchame. Parole, parole, parole. Te lo ruego.
Into the second half, we should mention, of course, the really tall referee, Kim Milton-Nielsen, who is 6'5". And it's very odd when you're culturally conditioned to believe that all referees are tiny, frustrated, bald men. Suddenly, this massive Dane shows up.
David Beckham gets clattered and ends up face down on the floor as a slight melee kind of gathers around him with Mr. Nielsen at the centre of it. He makes the rather unwise decision to, is it sort of like a little scorpion kick? He sort of lifts a leg and kicks Simeone, who makes an absolute meal of it. In the modern game, VAR would catch this. You might get away with it in 1998, but this is a referee with a 6'5" vantage point, as we've already discovered. He stood right over it, and it's a moment that I can still remember of just seeing that red card come out. Obviously, it's an iconic image now as well of Beckham's reaction. He knows immediately what he's done. You know, the next few months of his life are going to be absolute hell as well. In that moment, it felt like all that promise of from almost going in at half-time 2-1 up to being down to 10 men at 2-2 so soon, it just felt like same old England.
It was 2 minutes after the restart. And then the second half is literally England would soak up pressure, 10 men behind the ball. One ball would like squirt out. We'd have a run at them. Then the Argentinians would take over and it was right. Okay, back to the wall again, guys. I mean, I imagine for the neutral, it was a horrible watch. But for like both England and Argentina fans, it was a horrible watch because it was so tense. I don't remember any good football in the second half.
Beckham's little sort of back heel flick thing, it reminded me, you know, in films when like the couple get together and they kiss and the lady lifts her leg.
Yeah.
He does that, and it's so lame. At least punch the guy. At that point, my dad shouted, David Beckham should never play for England again.
Wow.
Because he takes a very moral hard line on these things. And of course, he never does.
Was your dad out burning effigies?
No. I mean, he talks a good game, but he's not going to burn an effigy.
Did that actually happen? Did actually effigies get burned?
An effigy of David Beckham was strung up outside West Ham's ground. That's the part of London that David Beckham's from, more or less. It's a game that England should have won because they do score a golden goal.
As a Spurs fan, Sol Campbell, who was still at Spurs at the time, and just rising and the power of that header and the exhilaration as he runs away. And again, we nearly concede in that moment, celebrating because a quick free kick's taken. And you kind of watch that back, and Shearer's doing what Shearer does. He is probably leading with an arm. It would 100% be a free kick now. I remember thinking it felt like it was harsh at the time, but the horror, I think, was it Gary Neville who was effectively calling all his teammates to basically let them know that the game was still going, and as Argentina plough down the pitch and very nearly score at the other end. If we feel that there's an injustice in this game, had that been the way we'd lost, then I think there would have been rioting in the streets.
Hoddle keeps Shearer and Owen both on the pitch and sort of alternates them playing up front and on the right wing through the whole game. He brings on Paul Merson for some reason, and David Batty. And also, with penalties clearly in mind, Hoddle brings on Gareth Southgate.
Redemption.
Hoddle, of course, famously said that there was no point practicing penalties. Just no point. Just because the teams that do practice them do well at them, There's no point because you can't replicate the atmosphere in the stadium. You can't replicate the atmosphere in a stadium of a match, and you practice that, don't you?
Can't replicate the pressure, especially you can't replicate the pressure when you've not practiced.
Utterly stupid. So it goes to penalties, and joy of joys, Hernan Crespo misses first.
It's not even a miss. It's saved by Seaman, who got a hand to the penalty in the first goal, and then he saves Crespo's penalty. You go, oh, I mean, I've never once felt confident, and this is why.
Up steps Paul Ince to put England in the lead. The Governor, a nickname he came up with for himself.
Ince, I think, is probably overcompensating here because I think he'd taken quite a lot of criticism for not volunteering at Euro 96. I think he reflected on that later in his career as maybe a bit of a regret as well. So to then step up for this and miss perhaps proves that wouldn't have changed much in Euro 96 either.
Yeah, I believe just after he missed, he turned to the crowd and went, "See?" Do you know who his niece is?
Tom Ince is his son, isn't it?
His niece is Rochelle Humes from S Club Juniors and the Saturdays, who now hosts Ninja Warrior UK. So it's back to level on penalties. And Argentina are 4-3 up, but David Batty can take it into sudden death. David Batty, who had never taken a penalty before, who doesn't like football, steps up to a bit of commentary that has spawned a completely different podcast.
Which actually isn't the line that he says.
Now, you know him better than anybody. Do you back him to score quickly, yes or no? Yes.
What is Kevin Keegan supposed to say to that question as Batty's about to take the penalty? Nah.
He kind of suggests that he's got like an intimate knowledge of him. And David Batty has that look of fear as this notorious Premier League hard man. He looks frightened as he steps up. I would like to point out that Rower's foot is not on that line. Again, in the time of VAR, he's so far off his line.
Pretty much no penalty is legal.
Yeah.
Until VAR comes through.
Yeah.
David Batty doesn't score because why would he? Apparently afterwards he was like totally fine.
Everyone else was commiserating. He had a shower and went home.
Also in the squad, Graham Lasso, who was well known for being the world's most intelligent man because he read The Guardian.
Our first England player to be born on the Channel Islands. Because
At a World Cup, yes.
Because obviously we never took Matt Letizia anyway.
No, Graham Lasso's middle name is Pierre. And he's married to an Argentinian.
Was he married to an Argentinian at the time of that match?
He married her the year before.
I mean, that's got to put some pressure on.
Tony Adams, star of this year's Strictly Come Dancing. He was at the heart of the England defence. He is one of the few footballers to have guest edited the Today programme. Also in the squad, Rob Lee, who Hoddle brings instead of Gascoigne and then never plays. He was arrested in 2007 with Warren Barton for stealing a limousine.
Do you know there's no such thing as a limousine? There's no manufacturers of limousines. You can't buy one. You have to make one yourself.
So see why Rob Lee nicked one.
The third Spurs player in the England squad that we haven't talked about yet is Ferdinand, who, despite the urban myth, did not trash the Blue Peter Garden with Dennis Wise.
Do you know who originated some of that myth? It's Les Ferdinand. He was on BBC Three saying that he did it, and then later was like, I didn't do it.
Hey, have you ever played a board game? You have? Then you'll love my book, 101 Board Games to Play Before You Die. I look at the board games that we've loved, hated, and thrown across the room in a fit of rage. I'll tell you which classic games are not worth the time and emotional torment, and which games you should be playing instead, as well as giving you advice on how to make your dinner parties more tolerable and how to pimp your Scrabble. The perfect gift for your nerdy friend, it's available from 101boardgames.com. That's 101boardgames.com. Into the quarterfinals then.
Those latter stages when you don't have that home, it's the whole kind of vibe of a World Cup changes so dramatically when your team gets knocked out, doesn't it? It's still enjoyable, but it's with this kind of sense of mourning of what could have been, and especially by a second round exit, because that's below par for England, isn't it?
It becomes one for the purists when England get knocked out. All the Flybanites and the glory hunters, they disappear, and only those of us insane enough to watch international football are left.
My mum and sister did not watch another game after the Argentina game, absolutely.
Ever.
Done.
You can't hurt me like this again.
Yeah, my mom, after watching, I think probably that game, or certainly one where England got beat, she was like, how can you watch this every week? And we would go, well, every week, it doesn't really matter. For the third World Cup in a row, Italy lose on penalties, this time to France after a 0-0. The only team to beat Italy in normal time since 1986 had been Ireland.
And Roberto Baggio scores a penalty. He absolutely leathers it, possibly because he's waited 4 years to do so.
And then Di Biagio hits the crossbar, and then he takes on the mantle for Italy for the next 4 years.
In 4 years' time, it should be Di Biagio. It's just a recurring algebraic problem.
The Italian squad features Roberto Di Matteo, scored in 2 FA Cup finals, managed Chelsea to the Champions League, and was bafflingly Villa manager for about 4 months.
That FA Cup final in 1997 is still not talked about in Chesterfield because, of course, Chesterfield should have been there had it not been for David Ellery. So I still remember that fell on my 13th birthday. I'd been invited to a wedding reception, and a wedding I didn't particularly want to go to, and managed to find a TV in the corner of a hotel and watch Roberto Di Matteo's goal after 43 seconds. Another one of those things that's just in your memory.
Federico Chiesa's dad, Enrico, was in the squad, as was Francesco Moriero, who is the current manager of the Maldives. Nice work if you can get it. Gianluca Pizzotto, their defensive midfielder, nicknamed Il Professorino, because...
He's got a degree.
Because he's now a teacher?
No, because he wore glasses. In 2006, just as the Calciopoli scandal was breaking, he fell out of a 4th-storey window at Juve headquarters while holding a rosary. He suffered multiple fractures and internal bleeding, but says it wasn't a suicide attempt.
I was very much expecting him to be dead. So
No, he's still alive.
Yeah, the fact that he lived is a surprise.
Maybe it's the rosary. I was just standing next to an open window on the 4th floor holding my rosary when I accidentally fell out of the window. Coincidentally, just as a massive betting scandal had been exposed. Anyway, Brazil-Denmark is quite a fun game.
Yeah, goals after 2 minutes and then 10 minutes.
Denmark take the lead after 2 minutes. Martin Jorgensen, but by 25 minutes they're 2-1 down after Bebeto and Rivaldo have put Brazil up front. And then 5 minutes into the second half, Brian Laudrup equalises after Roberto Carlos is just titting around in his own penalty area, trying to clear the ball with an overhead kick.
It is one of the most baffling decisions. What is he actually doing? Why are you doing that?
I'm sure he'll learn from that mistake and not do it in any major games again. Rivaldo, though, scores the winner, which means Denmark are out. This is their best ever World Cup and the last game that the Laudrup brothers play for them.
You look at the Denmark team and some of the players that have won the Euros for them 6 years earlier are kind of coming towards the end of their careers. I think sort of Denmark getting to the quarterfinals, that's probably just about above par for Denmark. You know, they are and running Brazil pretty close in this game. There's a piece of commentary in this game from Ron Atkinson, who says the way they're charging about, it's like everyone's on motorbikes. So that gives you an idea of Ron Atkinson coming towards the end of his commentary career, as we'll maybe not dig too deep into. What beautiful imagery there. I mean, football punditry's come a long way.
Ron Atkinson says that the 2 things that you need for football are the 2 M's. Do you know what the 2 M's are?
Motivation.
It's movement and positioning.
I mean, he's halfway towards a good point there, isn't he?
Who was in goal for Denmark?
Would be Schmeichel again, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's right. The dad of Kasper Schmeichel. He has a dog in Coronation Street named after him. Sadly, did not call his son Michael. Peter Schmeichel has a Premier League first.
The first Premier League goalkeeper to score?
Yes, he was.
Hey!
Do you know who he scored for?
Was it for Villa?
Is it Villa?
Yeah, it was. It was for Villa. He came up for a corner to get an equaliser and headed it in and went mental. His middle name is Boleslav.
Oh.
Which I was really disappointed when I found out because it's spelt Bolslaw. I thought, Bolslaw, that's a brilliant middle name. It's pronounced Boleslav. It's like a real name. Claudio Lopez scored an equaliser for Argentina against the Netherlands in the first 20 minutes in their quarter-final. Midway through the second half, Arthur Newman is sent off. And 3 minutes from the end, Ariel Ortega, nicknamed El Burrito,
The little donkey.
headbutts Edwin van der Sar, which, when you bear in mind the height difference, is quite scary,
Got jump.
and is sent off. But before the game could go to extra time, in the last minute, Dennis Bergkamp scores probably the greatest World Cup goal of all time.
It's amazing. I could watch that goal all day. It's always in control. It's such a lofted ball over, and then he just sort of like, yeah, I shall just take that, and then I'll pop that over the other shoulder. I shall just turn and shoot it into the bottom corner. It always looks better when a goal is against good opposition, and then you just make them look absolutely stupid.
Beautifully pulled down by Bergkamp! Oh, what a goal! Dennis Bergkamp has won it for Holland! That was absolutely brilliant!
As a Spurs fan, I can still appreciate the glory of Dennis Bergkamp, who I'm contractually obliged to mention was a Spurs fan growing up, just in the same way that Arsenal fans remind about Harry Kane being an Arsenal fan growing up. The way he takes that ball, leaves the defender on the floor and then finishes it off. And actually, you do see it in his reaction. He knows that he has just scored a goal that is going to live forever.
From adversity to triumph for the Dutch. They who were silent are now in song.
He takes 3 touches, all of them are perfect. The first one controls it, the second one takes the defender out of the equation, and the third one, it's so Bergkampy, that sort of languid finish, where it feels almost dismissive. Just kind of, off you go, ball. Off you go, into the net, make me look good.
Tony Adams said that when Bergkamp came, he was delighted because it meant that he could, and I quote, get the cigars out at the back.
Dennis Bergkamp, nicknamed the non-flying Dutchman.
Terrible fear of flying.
France is a pretty good World Cup for Dennis Bergkamp, isn't it? He can drive there.
In 2002, he scored a goal against Newcastle, which would be voted the Premier League's greatest ever goal, after which Bobby Robson said, you can't blame anyone for that. You just have to accept that Bergkamp did a beautiful thing. So, evil Argentina are out. Their team included Matias Almeida, nicknamed El Pelado.
The bold?
Yes, the bald one. He had long hair.
Yeah, but he was spiritually bold. So you could tell, sometimes you can look at a person and go, I know you.
It's like calling your massive mate tiny. Sergio Berti, who would go on to nearly play for Livingston in 2002, but he spits at a teammate during a pre-season friendly, so that doesn't happen. And their left-back, Jose Chamot, who once got a 1-game suspension for shaking Pierluigi Collina's hand too firmly after a game.
Let's face it, that takes some balls to look Pierluigi Collina in the eye and shake his hand firmly. So, fair play.
In a game that warmed the cockles of my heart, Croatia beat Germany 3-0. Robert Jarni scores from long range to give Croatia the lead. It's his only international goal, and what a time and way to score it.
It was on the stroke of half-time, wasn't it?
Yes. Germany have Christian Vaughan sent off, and Davor Suker gets a third for them after a lovely bit of skill, taking it around the goalkeeper.
The Croatians, clearly at this World Cup, are the surprise package. They are a really, really good side, and a young nation, a new nation, and there's kind of all of that pride wrapped up in that. And it's just the worst possible game, I think, for a German team to face, because there feels like that inevitability that Germany are just going to grind their way through to the final like they do. And this is the time where this German team very clearly runs out of steam.
Afterwards, Bertie Voets, the German coach, says, there were some very strange decisions against us at this World Cup. Maybe there was some secret instruction. Perhaps Germany had become too successful. Yes, Bertie, that'll be it.
Bertie Voets, who later goes on to manage Scotland to a new low. So I think this was pretty much the beginning of the end of Bertie Voets' career, I think, this evening.
So the semi-finals see Brazil play the Netherlands. Patrick Kluivert, who gets the equaliser with 3 minutes to go, cancelling out Ronaldo's opener. So the game goes to penalties.
There weren't many really, really big golden goals. Euro 2000 eventually is won by a golden goal, isn't it? And Paul Gascoigne very nearly puts England in the final at Euro 96. But yeah, this extra time period in the golden goal experiment just didn't seem to work. It just made games very, very cagey.
Brazilian defender Z Carlos, this is the only international game he ever played. He got one international cap, and it was a World Cup semi-final. And how lucky is he? The player he should have been marking, Mark Overmars, is out injured.
I think the thing I remember about this game as a neutral as well was that they're both really attractive sides. They've both been brilliant all the way through the World Cup. It's one of those games where actually you probably didn't mind who won. I think whoever was going through for that game probably would have gone into the final as the favourites. I think the Dutch may have narrowly been favourites over France had they got there, but Taffarel pulling off the heroic, he basically said that was God helping me. FIFA probably need to do something about that, really, investigation, something. But he...
Are you saying the one person more powerful than God is Sepp Blatter?
Philip Cocu and Ronald de Boer have their penalties saved by Taffarel. Philip Cocu looks like he should be the third de Boer twin. They all apparently have the same face. But Brazil are in their second consecutive final. France versus Croatia is the other semi-final. Davor Suker scores his fifth goal to give Croatia the lead because Lilian Thuram is playing him onside. But within a couple of minutes, Lilian Thuram scores his first international goal to equalise. And then 20 minutes later, he scores his final international goal to win the game. We tend to lionise attacking players in football as being the greatest of all time. But here's what I think. Lilian Thuram is the greatest footballer of all time.
Would you like to back this up with anything?
I don't know if you just heard what I said about the World Cup semi-final there.
Yeah.
Where he made a mistake and then more than atoned for it by scoring his only 2 international goals. And again, continuing the recurring theme of unlikely defenders scoring in World Cup semi-finals, he is the most capped French player with 142. He has written 3 graphic novels.
Oh, yes, please. Okay, I'm back on board now.
He also wrote the book White Thinking, How Racial Bias is Constructed and How to Move Beyond It.
And he did that as a comic book. Very nice.
That was a book he wrote as well as. In 2011, he curated an exhibition at the Musée de Quai Branly called Human Zoos, The Invention of the Savage. Was that you, Paul?
No.
The exhibition examined the human zoos that traced the practice of using colonial subjects as exhibits in zoos and freak shows. In 2013, Thuram marched in favour of same-sex marriage.
Okay, I'm on board now. Lilian Thuram is the greatest footballer. I can't remember anything about what he did as a footballer, but for being a person...
He won loads of stuff and was amazing.
Yeah.
Could we compare this with Michael Owen's Wikipedia page?
I don't like films versus I've written a book about race theory. A few minutes after Thuram scores the winner, Laurent Blanc stands quite near Slaven Bilic, who is coincidentally shot by a sniper in the crowd. So you think, based on Bilic's reaction, he grabs his face, starts rolling about, and Laurent Blanc is sent off for nothing, and that means he will miss the final. For nothing. Slaven Bilic has a law degree.
Doesn't he have a rock band as well?
Yes, the band Rawbal. They record a song for Euro 2008 called Vatrino Ludilo, which means fiery madness.
And then he went to West Brom, which was,
And recently, he just got hired by Watford. So I'll just say here, just because we're recording it like a week before this goes out, he's just been sacked by Watford.
And the new coach for Watford is Carl Jones. Carl, congratulations. We all get to do it once.
I can't ever get past what Slaven Bilic does to Laurent Blanc in this game. He could be the nicest bloke in the world, but I cannot get past it.
It's not even gamesmanship. It's cheating is what it is.
And the idea of missing a World Cup final in your home country, and I mean, that's bad enough, even if you deserved it, even if you went and did something that warrants a suspension, but you're not getting over that, are you? It's terrible.
In the last minute of the semi-final, Croatia bring on Robert Prosinecki. I don't know what they expect him to do in 1 minute. Earlier in this tournament, he became the first player to score for 2 different nations at a World Cup. He played for Yugoslavia in 1990. He would not quit smoking.
That's probably why you only bring him on for the last minute.
Yeah. Too busy having a fag, isn't he? In the third place playoff, Croatia win 2-1. All the goals are in the first 36 minutes. And Suker gets his 6th goal to win it and win the Golden Boot. Then, just as is usual in the third place playoff, all the players are too knackered to do anything else. So the game sort of peters out into nothing. The Dutch goal is scored by Boudewijn Zenden, who is nicknamed Bollo and not the Clowns. He is a vegetarian with a black belt in judo. Sadly, not gymnastics, because when he tries to celebrate the goal, he tries to do an acrobatic somersault, but he just ends up throwing himself face first into the ground. It is a rubbish celebration. The Netherlands are managed by Gus Hiddink, and this is the first of 2 consecutive semi-finals that he is a manager in. In 2007, he gets a 6-month suspended jail sentence for tax evasion.
There's a lot of that in later footballers' careers, isn't there?
Yes. I've had to stop writing down every motoring offence by players. We just all have them.
You can afford drivers. Stop doing it. You can afford drivers. You can afford accountants.
Or just nick a limousine.
Jaap Stam is their centre-half.
He was sold by Man United, and they said it was because Alex Ferguson had looked at his stat, thought he wasn't making enough tackles, and they realised later on that, oh, actually, he didn't need to make tackles, that he was an incredibly effective defender. And it's not. It's because he wrote an autobiography whilst he was at Man United where he called the Neville brothers busy
The worst kind. He was the world's most expensive defender when Man United signed him for £10.6 million. Just after this World Cup, his first child was born after it was induced 2 weeks early so that it would happen before pre-season training started.
That is dedication when you invoke nature just so that you can get back to Alex Ferguson's pre-season training camp.
And he still got rid of him. Also in their squad, Clarence Seedorf, nicknamed Willy Wonka, apparently. I don't know why. Because he kills children in a variety of humorous ways? I don't know. He won the Champions League with 3 different clubs, the only player to ever do that. Ajax, Real Madrid and AC Milan. He speaks 6 languages fluently. He owns a restaurant in Milan called Fingers.
I mean, nobody needs to know the reason behind that, do they?
The best case scenario is everything's handmade, and that is the best case scenario.
He paid for a stadium in Suriname, which is called the Clarence Seedorf Stadium.
I reckon that's allowed.
Croatia are coached by Miroslav Blažević, nicknamed Trener svi trenera, the coach of all coaches. Such was his popularity in Croatia that he ran for president in 2005 and got a whopping 0.8% of the vote.
It's no George Weah.
Everyone's like, why didn't you put Prosinecki on earlier? But in 2009, he successfully ran to be a city councillor for Zagreb, where he was put in charge of naming all the streets.
Are they all named after, like, Robert Gianni or whatever?
There's one called Because He Wouldn't Stop Smoking Avenue.
And Lauren Blanc actually did dive.
Close. They also had their left-back Anthony Seric, who had been picked by Australia because he was born in Sydney, but he chose to go with Croatia, who then just don't play him at all.
It's the international football version of pissing up a lamppost, isn't it, basically? You just bring them in for one and then leave them out forever.
Igor Stimac, their centre-back, has currently probably got one of the biggest jobs in football. He's the manager of the Indian national football team. Just the 1.5 billion people to pick from there, mate. Zvonimir Boban, nicknamed Zorro. After retirement, he got a history degree with a thesis on Christianity in the Roman Empire.
See, that's the thing I like.
Foreign footballers are just cleverer. He worked for FIFA helping to implement VAR, and during the 2018 World Cup, he shared an apartment with Pierluigi Collina.
Just sort of like a slightly more academic version of men behaving badly.
Yeah.
It's just called men behaving. Has the Collina popped around?
He now has the job title Chief of Football at UEFA. He's in charge of all of it. I don't know.
I'm gonna have to go on UEFA's LinkedIn and just look at some of these titles. Chief of Football. That's incredible. Where's the promotion from that, and what do you have to do to become Chief of Football?
Zoran Mamic, their defensive midfielder, was convicted of tax evasion. His Croatian assets had been confiscated and he was arrested in Bosnia in 2021 after Croatia had issued an international arrest warrant for him. I think this is the first World Cup player to have been on the Interpol Most Wanted list. Anyway, the final. France are the first-time finalists for 24 years. And Saïd Belkola is the first and to date only African to referee a World Cup final. He's from Morocco. He died during the 2002 World Cup at age just 45.
Wow.
I remember this. It was a couple of days after my 21st birthday. So it was my family and my mates, James and Anthony. Anthony, who doesn't really like football, watching this World Cup. And I was the only one supporting France.
They kind of were underdogs, even though a decent side playing at your own home stadium.
Of all the people watching this at home, there was a guy called Adrian Fitzpatrick who'd put an £18,000 double on Arsenal to win the Premier League and Brazil to win the World Cup. He stood to win £544,000, which, of course, in 1998 would have bought you half a town. And I imagine it would have been fairly nervous in the Fitzpatrick household as this was kicking off. Obviously, it's not going to end too well for him. I feel like I should find this guy on Facebook and see if he's still around and whether he does live in a mansion. Because if he had 18 grand to spunk on it in the first place, then probably he was doing okay. But yeah, that would be pretty tense.
Yeah, just message him with Allez les Bleus. Do you know why I wanted France to win?
Because they got a better kit.
Because before the World Cup, Jean-Marie Le Pen, the French fascist, said that it wasn't a real French squad, that it was a mongrel squad because it included players who had heritage from other nations or who were born in other nations, other former French colonies. And I just wanted France to win, just to stick it to him.
That's fair enough.
They were the first multicultural European team to win a World Cup.
There's been a lot written about this in the years that followed because actually they were a unifying force for France as a team, and actually Zidane obviously became probably the fulcrum of that, and they were a multicultural European nation. Maybe that wasn't as common to see perhaps in previous World Cups, whereas now it's much more commonplace. Of course, remembering the drama that kicked off before the game with Ronaldo. I mean, that was almost like Twitter before Twitter. You know, there was all of these rumours going around that Ronaldo had collapsed, that he'd had a fit, that he wasn't in the team, that he was in the team. And that drama overshadowed everything. All the pre-match excitement was all about Ronaldo.
Before the game, Ronaldo has a seizure and is dropped in favour of Edmundo. And then 30 minutes later, that decision is mysteriously reversed. They reissue a team sheet with Ronaldo in it. Some people say that the sponsors, Nike, made them do it. Actually, there's not much evidence that happened. I think that was just a rumour that started at the time. But, you know, picking a clearly unfit player, that always works out, doesn't it? So that's fine.
It's never not gone wrong. Pick your best 11 on the day.
And no one ever will. The convulsion happened around 2:00 in the afternoon, but by 8:00, Ronaldo had slept, been thoroughly checked out, and was telling everyone that he was fine. And the doctors who didn't want to cost Brazil the World Cup said, all right. None of them wanted to be the doctor who said, no, Ronaldo can't play and then Brazil lose. There are rumours that Ronaldo was given a blue pill before the game, but no one knows if it actually happened or what the pill was. It could have been a Smartie. We don't know. He might not have had anything at all. But France, clearly, they've heard, all right, Ronaldo's clearly not fit. We need to do something to even things out. So we won't play either Thierry Henry or David Trezeguet, who are sitting on the bench. We will instead pick Stefan Guivarc'h.
Stefan Guivarc'h is in Jonathan Wilson's book about the history of football tactics. He says he is possibly the worst player ever to win a World Cup. Like, Jonathan, you didn't need to say this.
Would that be Sunderland fan Jonathan Wilson having a go at Newcastle United's Stefan Guivarc'h, by the way?
Yeah, that's possibly.
And he has a couple of chances where he's straight through on the goalkeeper and he just messes them up. But that doesn't matter because Roberto Carlos is back to his old habit of fannying around in defence. He's mucking about on the touchline, trying to do keepy-uppies, and the ball goes out for a corner. There'll be no problem there, will there? Apart from the fact that Zinedine Zidane heads the ball in.
I mean, it's a proper header from a corner as well, isn't it? Like, that is one hell of a goal. And again, I think everyone is coming into this final expecting Brazil to win, but it appears that they don't appear to be themselves, whether that be the Ronaldo thing or whatever it may be.
That goal was so good that just before halftime, they decided to do pretty much exactly the same thing again. And
Yes,
that makes it 2-0.
It's one of those ones where you just go, well, don't fall for the same thing twice.
2-0 at half-time, and Ronaldo is looking way out of sorts. At some points, he collides with Barthez, and there's much concern, but he gets up and carries on. Midway through the second half, Marcel Desailly is sent off for a second yellow card. In injury time, the world's most expensive footballer, who was, at this point...
Denilson.
Yes, Denilson, 21.5 million. He hits the crossbar before Vieira of Arsenal plays in Petit of Arsenal to make it 3-0 with the final kick of the tournament. Petit would celebrate by appearing in the 1998 Christmas special of The Bill.
You're Emmanuel Petit.
That's right.
Well, I'll be damned.
France are the 7th nation to win the World Cup and the 6th to do it as hosts, and to date, the last. No host has won since. At this point, 3-0 was Brazil's record World Cup defeat. And Jacques Chirac presents the trophy to Didier Deschamps. He looks like a cross between Dusty Bin and Sam the American Eagle. His cousin had also got to a final in 1998 because his cousin was the tennis player Natalie Tosiak, who got to the Wimbledon final but lost, so he got that one over on her. The Brazil squad mentioned Denilson. Do you know who paid the 21.5 million for him?
Real Betis, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. Not who you'd expect. In 6 seasons of playing for them, scored 14 goals. Bargain. Edmundo, the player who nearly started for Brazil in the World Cup final, nicknamed Animal, in 1999, he hired an entire circus to perform in his back garden for his son's first birthday. It is alleged that he got a chimp drunk on whiskey. 3 years before this World Cup, he drove drunk into the Rio Carnival, killing 3 people, and got a 7-day suspended sentence.
I mean, that really puts the chimp thing into perspective.
And Giovanni, who once called Louis van Gaal Hitler for Brazilians. I think if I think it was Hitler, it was Hitler for Brazilians, mate, when he moved there after the war. The French team are coached by Aime Jacquet, which means love coat.
I imagine more than a few love coats were used in France that evening to celebrate the victory.
As recently as that year, the French press had been clamouring for him to resign.
Isn't that always the way, this redemption story?
It isn't just our press who are horrible.
But he knew something that they didn't know.
What was that?
He knew that Brazil couldn't defend corners.
I think, James, the bell may be required for a World Cup first. This is the first final contested between 2 teams who did not play a single qualification game between them to reach the final.
Wild applause for that. What a staggering fact. It's the host against the holders. It's the first time that's ever happened in a final.
Yes, please. I like that, Cal. Thank you very much.
With Laurent Blanc out of the side, who comes in into central defence?
Frank Leboeuf?
Frank Leboeuf. Frank the Beef, yes. Do you know what he did after he retired?
Is he the one who started motor racing?
Nope.
If it's cattle farmer, then that would be incredible.
He moved to Hollywood and studied acting at the Lee Strasberg Institute, where all the Hollywood stars go, like Alec Baldwin and Steve Buscemi and Scarlett Johansson. His filmography includes The Theory of Everything, where he plays a Swiss doctor.
The Stephen Hawking one?
Yes, the Oscar-nominated Stephen Hawking film. Yeah, he's in that. He was also Peacock in the first season of French Masked Singer. Swings and roundabouts. My second favourite player in the French squad behind Thuram is Christian Carambeau. I liked him because even though La Marseillaise is the best national anthem, he refuses to sing it because of France's dodgy colonial past. Carambeau's great-grandfather was exhibited at the 1931 Paris Colonial Exposition as a cannibal among 100 New Caledonia natives. Later, the cannibals were sent to Germany in exchange for some crocodiles.
No wonder Lilian Thuram wrote about this.
At 32 days, it is the longest World Cup ever. Time then to rate the 1998 World Cup in our World Cup of World Cups leaderboard, currently being led by Mexico 86 with a score of 8.19.
Going on, winning the entire World Cup, fantastic stadiums.
And the party in the streets afterwards looked really fun.
Also, this is the first World Cup for a long time where they used to do it so that the groups were based in 1 or 2 cities that were quite near each other, and that entire group would play there. But this was the first one where everyone played everywhere, which is fine because transport links in France are really good and it's not that big. It is the first 32-team World Cup. Do you think that diluted the quality in the groups?
I like hammering in the groups. Can't all be the traditional 1-alls and they go to penalties.
I'm a fan of the 32-team World Cup. I think bringing the likes of Jamaica along to a World Cup is good fun. I think they added a lot. I think that 32 teams is the perfect number of teams for a World Cup. It also extends it and means more fun for all of us. So I think that I would lose a couple of marks for the golden goal. I think that did not work.
What are the big controversial moments of this World Cup?
Ronaldo fitting and being pushed on by sponsors, possibly.
It broke the record for sendings off, 22 red cards, and a lot of people do get sent off for not much.
There were people trying to get people sent off.
Yes, Slaven Bilic, we see you. Spain going out in the first round was a bit of a shock. Croatia getting to the semis was a bit of a shock.
But effectively, it's host versus holders by the final.
Brazil was still in it up until the end. If you were right in the final, you'd want Brazil to at least get one in there to keep it a bit more woo.
The only thing that could have added to it was a fit and firing Ronaldo, kind of keeping Brazil in it a little bit longer. So
I think the Brazil team were a better team, probably overall in that tournament, but you've got to prove it, and France proved it.
The top scorer, which was Davor Suker, he scored 6 goals. He scored in every Croatia game except the Argentina group game. In 1996, he posed for a photo at the grave of the Croatian fascist dictator Ante Pavelic. And in 2011, he was fined for stealing antique coins left by another passenger on a flight. Instead of handing them in, he gave them to his girlfriend.
maybe it was for that little charity envelope to hand in for the loose change at the end of the flight.
I don't remember any of the goals, though.
I remember the one against Germany.
Not as glamorous as a Ronaldo, had a Ronaldo won the Golden Boot.
British contribution. 2 teams at the tournaments. 1 out in the groups, 1 out in the second round. It's not great, is it?
England managing to lose a group game, which meant they faced Argentina rather than Croatia in the second round. It could have all been so different, perhaps, although let's face it, probably not.
There's so many players that came from who did well at this tournament that then got brought over to England and played in the Premier League.
Yeah, as a World Cup, I think it picked up, certainly in this country where Euro 96 left off, has just becoming a huge, huge tournament that everybody was really engaged in.
And finally, entertainment value. I've got some stats for you here. There were 2.67 goals per game, which is just under USA 94. There were 4 0-0s, 12 1-0s, and 2 dead rubbers in 64 games.
I'm romantic about this World Cup because of the age I was, because it was all at convenient times to watch. The only thing that lets it down is the England performance, but other than that, it was just a brilliant, brilliant World Cup for me that I still remember more about than I do recent World Cups that have passed.
The scores are in then for France 98 in our World Cup of World Cups leaderboard. I can exclusively reveal that it scores 7.29, which puts it in 5th place behind Mexico 86, England 66, Mexico 70, Spain 82, and then France 98.
So amongst some very good company.
I think that's probably a fair place in it. For personal reasons, I love this World Cup. I don't think it belongs in the World Cup of World Cups, but at 5th place, when it's currently on place to go out in the quarterfinals, I think that seems about right.
On penalties in the quarters. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Carl. Where can people find out more about you?
So I'm on various social medias where you will find all of the things that I do, from stand-up comedy to books about football to my new podcast, When Football Began Again, which is all about the Premier League era, so from 1992 onwards, and just kind of delve in, very much like this podcast, into those weird little things that you've half forgotten, the best goals, the best matches. It's a lot of fun, and it should be out ready for the new year. So When Football Began Again. But you can find me as Carl Jones, at Carl D Jones on Twitter and things like that.
Before we go, a quick teaser for you to think about before the next episode. Rigobert Song was the first player to be sent off at 2 World Cups. Who is the only other player to have achieved this feat? I'll give you the answer at the start of the next episode, when we'll be talking about breakfast football, shocks, shocking refereeing, golden goals, golden boots, stupid haircuts, and the easiest path to the final ever as we deep dive the 2002 World Cup in Japan and South Korea. Thank you so much for listening to this. Please tell everyone you've ever met that this podcast exists. You can email us worldcupofworldcups@gmail.com and support us at ko-fi.com/worldcupofworldcups. I'm at James E. Cook.
I'm at Comedy Savage.
And I'm at Carl D. Jones.
Before we go, do you remember how the BBC coverage for France 98 ended?
Yes, it was Des Lynam reading Rudyard Kipling, was it not?
Yes, it was. He read the poem If over the traditional end of tournament montage, and he's one of the greatest pieces of television in history. And so I can't think of a better way to finish this podcast than with that. Until next time, au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose, and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son.